And President Biden is in Helsinki this morning, welcoming the newest member of NATO. Finland joined last year, a move that doubled the alliance's border with Russia. The trip is meant to show NATO's expanding power and influence against Russian President Vladimir Putin. But Biden's visit also marks a stark contrast to Donald Trump's trip to Finland's capital almost exactly 5 years ago. We all remember that. Then
Many people are calling that the Lemire summit.
It was. Then President Trump famously stood by Vladimir Putin and defended the Russian president's denials of election interference, going against the findings of U.S. intelligence on the world stage.
Just now, President Putin denied having anything to do with the election interference in 2016. Every U.S. intelligence agency has concluded that Russia did. My first question for you, sir, is who do you believe? My second question is, would you now, with the whole world watching, tell President Putin, would you denounce what happened in 2016, and would you warn him to never do it again?
So let me just say that we have two thoughts. You have groups that are wondering why the FBI never took the server. Why haven't they taken the server? Why was the FBI told to leave the office of the Democratic National Committee? I've been wondering that. I've been asking that for months and months, and I've been tweeting it out and calling it out on social media. Where is the server? I want to know, where is the server, and what is the server saying? With that being said, all I can do is ask the question. My people came to me, Dan Coates came to me, and some others. They said they think it's Russia. I have President Putin. He just said it's not Russia. I will say this. I don't see any reason why it would be, but I really do want to see the server.
Jonathan looks a little scruffy.
Yeah, you know, first of all, Donald Trump actually siding with Vladimir Putin, an ex-KGB agent, guy that kills politicians that oppose him and kills journalists who write bad things about him. It's quite a glare that Vladimir Putin, I've never noticed it before, gave to Jonathan Lemire there after the question was asked. And Willie, if you'll remember, you know, Lemire, he's, you know, we've cleaned him up a little bit. He looked kind of scruffy there.
He did.
He was like a South. He was like a South Boston punk there. And I don't know if you remember, but he got in a shoving match with some of Vlad's punks. I think this was the location, pushing each other out. I mean, rough days.
Yeah.
He's looking. Let me tell you, Willie cleaned up now, but he still has the dark soul of a South Boston punk.
He does, and he went toe-to-toe with Vladimir Putin's security forces and lived to tell the tale. And if you look at that side by side, certainly has changed his approach to his hair in the 5 years since Helsinki.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well,
Credit to the hair and makeup department here at MSNBC. But let's give him a chance to defend himself. That is Jonathan Lemire, White House bureau chief at Politico, of course, the host of Way Too Early, joining us from Helsinki. Also with us here at the table in New York, president, founder of Eurasia Group and G0 Media, Ian Bremmer. Good morning, Ian. Good to have you with us. So, John, we'll let you defend yourself on the hair 5 years ago at Helsinki, but more broadly, the contrast that we're seeing 5 years later with this president in that same city.
Yeah, we were all so much younger then, weren't we? Yes, credit to the hair and makeup team there at MSNBC for my glow up ahead of my return here to Helsinki. But it is a remarkable parallel that a U.S. president has returned to the Finnish capital 5 years to the week, nearly 5 years to the day since the last time we heard an American president here. And of course, you just played it. Donald Trump standing alongside Vladimir Putin, siding with Putin over his own government about the 2016 election interference, taking Putin's side. And now President Biden is here touting the addition of Finland to an alliance meant as a bulwark to stop that very same Russian leader. The world has changed dramatically in the 5 years since our last time in Helsinki. And we'll be hearing from President Biden later today, coming off the heels of that NATO summit, which we'll get to in a minute. And he will talk about how Finland really strengthens the alliance, and also just how all of the West, the idea of multilateral alliances, has been revitalized because of that man, Vladimir Putin. And of course, the shadow of Donald Trump still looms large here in Helsinki. He is, of course, a leading contender to be president again in 2024, were he to win. And that is something that gives these allies great anxiety, his potential return. The idea that the United States is back, but there are concerns as to back for how long.
Hey, Jonathan, 5 years is a snap of a finger in terms of history. Of course, 5 years ago, it was before you outfitted yourself in better suits and shirts and ties and stuff like that.
Sure.
But could you please talk a bit about what is a striking contrast to many people, just the visuals from the President Biden's trip this week and when you were there 5 years ago with President Trump. There was a particularly striking visual yesterday of President Biden with his arm around President Scholz of Germany, both of them laughing and smiling with one another, and it was a striking contrast to what had happened during the Trump administration.
No question there, Mike. Let's remember that Trump's visit to Helsinki 5 years ago came just days after he was in NATO at the Brussels, the NATO's headquarters, and threatened to pull the United States out of that alliance. That was also 5 years ago. He was talked out of it, but he nearly detonated the signature post-World War II multinational alliance. And instead now we have President Biden here expanding it. Finland is in. Sweden is on a path to be in as well. And you mentioned it, he certainly enjoys a warm camaraderie with a number of the European leaders, and he had a positive meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, which was the real headline yesterday. Zelensky had come to Vilnius really angry, thought that NATO was dragging their feet, that he was frustrated that they were not going to get his country into the alliance. But after 24 hours of diplomacy, meeting with Biden and others, he changed his tune. And in fact, in his meeting with President Biden yesterday, I was able to ask President Zelensky, was he satisfied? Was this enough? Did he get enough assurances from the allies? And he said he did. There was more military assurance, more security promised. Yes, Ukraine, he still wants to join NATO eventually, but for the moment, that tension has dissipated, and now the return to focusing on its counteroffensive against Russia.
Let's watch that moment. Jonathan Lemire asking President Zelensky yesterday at the NATO summit about how he feels now about the security guarantees from the United States and from NATO.
President Zelensky, are you satisfied with what you got from NATO? You were so frustrated yesterday. Is this enough? Are you satisfied, sir?
I think at the end of summit we had great unity from our leaders and security guarantees that the success for this summit. I think so, but it's my opinion. Thank you.
FBI Director Christopher Wray appeared before the House Judiciary Committee yesterday for nearly 5 hours.
Ray's Republican, right?
He's
Republican.
Appointed by Donald Trump.
He's appointed, so he's a Trump appointee, and Trump, only the best people.
A Trump-appointed Republican.
Trump-appointed Republican. Okay, yeah. Okay.
So he fielded questions from some of the same members of Congress who have recently called for his impeachment.
But those are Republicans too. So Republicans want to impeach a Republican? Why?
Trump Republicans want to impeach a Trump-appointed Republican.
Why?
Despite being appointed by Donald Trump and a registered Republican voter, Republican lawmakers have baselessly accused Wray of using the FBI to target those with conservative beliefs, including the former president himself. Director Wray was having none of it.
There is a two-tier justice system that has been weaponized to persecute people based on their political beliefs, and that you have personally worked to weaponize the FBI against conservatives.
I would disagree with your characterization of the FBI, and certainly your description of my own approach. The idea that I'm biased against conservatives seems somewhat insane to me, given my own personal background.
You preside over the FBI that has the lowest level of trust in the FBI's history. People trusted the FBI more when J. Edgar Hoover was running the place than when you are. And the reason is because you don't give straight answers.
Respectfully, Congressman, in your home state of Florida, the number of people applying to come work for us and devote their lives working for us is up over 100%.
January 6th, was beyond a weaponization of government. It was a nuclearization of government against the government. I think Tucker Carlson and some of the members' colleagues on the other side of the aisle have said that Ray Epps was a secret government agent in helping encourage this crime so as to make the president look bad. Do you have any knowledge of Ray Epps being a secret government agent?
No. I will say this notion that somehow the violence at the Capitol on January 6th was part of some operation orchestrated by FBI sources and agents is ludicrous.
I want to use and examine the case of the Mar-a-Lago documents because it's been used by the former president as a pitying moment, as though he had somehow been victimized.
I don't want to be commenting on the pending case, but I will say that there are specific rules about where to store classified information and that those need to be stored in a SCIF, a secure compartmentalized information facility. And in my experience, ballrooms, bathrooms, and bedrooms are not SCIFs.
Mike. On for 5 hours yesterday. Director Wray sat in that chair, calmly rebutted and took down some conspiracy theories and defended the FBI. I have to say it is disorienting, and Joe has made this point many times, and probably for you, someone who's covered Republicans for a long time, to see Republican members of Congress attacking with such venom the FBI, attacking the military, attacking the Justice Department, all these law enforcement stalwarts now they view as a part of a deep state conspiracy. And why are they doing all this? It goes back to the root of defending Donald Trump.
Yeah, it's an extremely unusual way of trying to grow your political party, to take on one of the more legendary, certainly, elements of government and one of the more honored elements of government, the Federal Bureau of Investigation. And then, as you point out, in addition to that, they have attacked the American military on many occasions. And they continue to do it. Now, is it a fringe of the Republican Party? Is it the majority of the existing Republican Party in Congress? That we don't know. But I don't think it's a majority, even close to a majority, of Republican voters out there. Even Republican voters should be offended at the totally ignorant approach many members of that party took yesterday against Director Wray.
I mean, the problem, Mike, is that the leaders of the House Republicans are talking this way. The people that are running the committees, some of the most powerful, some of the most influential people hate law enforcement. They hate the FBI. They hate the premier law enforcement agency in America. They hate military leaders. They're constantly trashing the United States military. It's crazy what they're doing. They're blocking the Marine Corps, the United States Marine Corps, from having a commandant for the first time in 150 years. They say they wish American military people could be as tough and masculine as the Russian military. I mean, are you kidding me? Would we like to ask the Russian military? And you know what we ought to do? We ought to talk to those 500 Wagner Group thugs that rushed the United States military and ask. Oh, we can't. They were all killed in like 2 or 3 minutes. You know, I think the U.S. troops were probably watching MLB and somebody said, Russians are attacking us. They go, okay, kill them. And then they went back to the game before the end of the inning. It was over just like that. And you've got Republicans saying that they want our troops to be more like Russia. It's absolutely insane. And Katty K, they talk about defunding the FBI because the FBI is trying to actually enforce laws against people who steal nuclear secrets. And this is what Chris Wray said yesterday Defunding the FBI like these Republicans want to defund the FBI, it would hurt the American people, neighborhoods and communities all across this country, the people who are protecting from cartels, violent criminals, gang members, predators, foreign and domestic terrorists, and cyber attacks. Like, these Republicans want to gut an agency that protects Americans from terrorists, foreign and domestic, from people who are trying to steal their identities, from people who are draining money out of their parents' and grandparents' bank accounts, drug cartels who are trying to push more and more fentanyl into this country. That is who the House Republicans have declared to be their enemy.
Yeah, we look back at what's happened in the United States since 2001 and the attacks of 9/11, and part of the reason that America has not been attacked again in that kind of awful way, and other countries here in Europe have been attacked, is because of the work of the FBI, because of the investigations that they have carried out on foreign and increasingly on domestic terrorists who would like to do harm to American people. Without the FBI, the chances of some kind of attack on the United States grow exponentially. I thought what was really interesting about the hearings yesterday was how Chris Wray just managed to keep it super low key. He didn't give people like Matt Gaetz that opportunity, that clip where you saw the director of the FBI getting angry, which it felt at times like Matt Gaetz was trying to rile him into doing that. And he also turned the tables a bit and he said, listen, why have the number of people applying to the FBI from your state, from Florida and from Texas, gone up by something like 100% if the American population is so opposed and thinks, you know, that this is a terrible institution? I think he handled it as well as he possibly could, given the kinds of attacks and the conspiracy theories that he was having to deal with.
I remember laying there and I go, oh my God, I was shocked. I'm not gonna lie. He understands that it could all be gone tomorrow, and he doesn't take that for granted. When I first met him, I didn't really know what he was doing. It's awkward, especially when you first start dating. Whenever somebody introduces something to Mario, he is very open-minded, and if it's going to help him, he wants to try it. So when he brought it up, I said sure. I knew right away. He wasn't complaining as much. I like easy things, and that was most important for me, that it was easy. I mean, with 3 kids, 3 dogs.
Joining us now, National Security Council Coordinator for Strategic Communications at the White House, retired Rear Admiral John Kirby. Admiral, good morning. Thanks for being with us again this morning. So there was a dramatic change in tone from President Zelensky over the last couple of days. He came in very angry at NATO, suggesting that it was showing weakness by not admitting. We're looking at some live pictures, by the way, right now. This is President Biden meeting with Nordic leaders. But President Zelensky was very frustrated with the idea that Ukraine was not getting guarantees, that it would not be admitted imminently to NATO. And after his meeting with President Biden, it was a complete 180. He seemed happy and grateful to the President of the United States and to the other leaders of NATO countries for the security guarantees. So what took place during that 1-hour meeting between President Biden and President Zelensky?
They had a very constructive conversation, and I know that sounds like Diplo speak, but it's the truth. It was a longer meeting than had been planned. The two really do, when they get the chance to talk behind closed doors, they really do have fruitful and productive and detailed specific discussions. And that was the case yesterday, where the president had a chance to explain to President Zelensky exactly what our thinking here was. Yes, eventual membership, security guarantees between now and then, and right now the focus making sure that you succeed on the battlefield. He laid that all laid it all out clearly for President Zelensky, and I think President Zelensky, you could see for yourself by the tone of his rhetoric when he came out of that meeting, how much he appreciated that. And he came away, the president believes, President Zelensky, he came away from that discussion really, truly understanding the scope, the depth, and the sincerity of President Biden's commitment to Ukraine.
Admiral, now that the NATO summit is over, the focus will reshift back to Ukraine and to the battlefield. You mentioned it just there, the ongoing counteroffensive. Even the Ukrainians are saying, in public and in private, that it's been pretty tough going the last month. What's your expectation for the counteroffensive now as we head into the summer? Are they getting all of the supplies they need? And at what stage would the Americans, the White House, like to see more progress than the Ukrainians have made up until now?
Well, the Ukrainians themselves would like to see more progress than they've been able to make. They're running into some entrenched defenses by the Russians. The Russians have had many months now to dig in, and I mean literally dig in trenches. They have defense in depth, and defense is the stronger form of war. The Russians are taking advantage of that. For the first time now, really the Ukrainians are the ones on the offense. They're pushing forward. The Russians are trying to hold them. And so they're running right into that. They're also having a significant issue with minefields. And it's hard enough to go through a minefield, terrestrial or maritime, just by itself. Think about trying to do that while you're under fire. And they're really in a gunfight. It's a lot of artillery back and forth. So there's a lot of vicious fighting yet to come. I think it's going to be weeks and months before we really know how successful this counteroffensive can be. But the president made it clear to President Zelensky that we're going to stay with them. We're going to keep giving them as much support as we can. Your first question about do they have what they need? We're making sure that they do. In fact, just last week, a major package was announced. I know the cluster munitions got all the headlines, but if you take a look at everything else that was in that package, you can see it's all designed to help them break through these Russian defenses.
So, Admiral, as you clearly know, I mean, the two critical elements of warfare are ordnance and logistics. And it would seem that the Ukrainians are intent on trying to cut the supply lines of the Russians down towards the Azov Sea. Given that, it probably strategy, what's the story on ordnance? Can we supply enough ordnance? Are we short on ordnance here in the United States in turning it out? Can we get enough to them?
Well, it's sort of yes to both, Mike. One, yes, we can meet their needs. That's one of the reasons why the president agreed to send cluster munitions as a part of a package of additional normal, what we call unitary artillery shells, regular artillery shells, to make sure that we keep the flow going so that their howitzers don't fall silent, so that they can continue to defend themselves as we work, and we are right now, and we think over the next months work to get the production rate up of unitary artillery shells to a level where we can resupply them at a faster pace than we are right now. Their inventories are running low. And part of the reason why that is because, again, production rates, but also because we got to make sure we have enough for our own national security here in the United States and with our allies and partners. So we understand this is an issue. We're working on it very hard. And I think in coming months, you'll see us be able to go back to the supply of unitary artillery shells rather than these cluster munitions.
National Security Council Coordinator for Strategic Communications at the White House, retired Rear Admiral John Kirby. Always great to have you on. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Admiral, for your service to this country as always.